In the heart of Ilorine, along a dusty street flanked by old zinc-roofed houses and tiny shops, there stood a small wooden salon known by everyone in the neighborhood. To a passerby, the commotion inside was nothing unusual. Its only ornament was a faded signboard that read Hair Salon. Yet, despite its modest appearance, the salon was always bustling with people, especially women and little girls who came from every corner of the community. The reason was simple. Inside that wooden shop worked Yaba, the woman widely regarded as the best hairdresser in all of Ilorine. Her real name was Ali, but hardly anyone called her that anymore. Everyone knew her as Abba, not because she was old, but because of the grandmotherly way she spoke and the authority she commanded when braiding hair. Whatever style she created stayed neat for weeks. No hair was too stubborn for her skilled fingers. And the best part? Her prices were modest, far cheaper than those of the modern salons nearby. But Abba had her own unique style. Unlike other hairdressers who used chairs and mirrors, she employed a method many found unusual. Customers never sat on chairs. Instead, they had to sit cross-legged on the floor while she perched on a small wooden stool. Then she would place the customer's head snugly between her thick thighs and begin braiding. She insisted this was the only way to keep hair tight and tidy. Some complained about the discomfort, but most endured it just to experience her magic touch. Whenever someone passed her salon, they could hear her booming voice inside, sometimes scolding a child for squirming, other times singing old Yoruba folk songs as her fingers danced through the hair. The place was always alive with laughter, gossip, and occasional tears when the comb tugged too hard. Parents loved her work so much that every weekend they brought their children to her salon. In their eyes, braiding wasn't just about appearance. It was a matter of culture and identity. Mothers wanted their daughters' hair neat and long-lasting, especially for school. That's why Abba's small salon, despite its unconventional methods, remained the busiest in the area. She had no real rivals. Other hairdressers admired her skill, but couldn't compete with her prices. Week after week, month after month, Ali, aka Yaba, reigned as the queen of braids for the neighborhood's little ones. Yet the name Yaba often stirred more fear than excitement. Whenever mothers mentioned a trip to her salon, some children would cry from morning till night, desperate to avoid the ordeal. Sitting in that salon felt like torture to them. Yaba would press their heads tightly, and little Aisha would scream. Miriam once told her father that Abba's braids felt like prison bars, squeezing her head so hard she could barely breathe. But parents paid no heed. Such complaints were dismissed as childish exaggerations. The truth was that Abba was strict with her customers, especially children. She believed firmly in holding the head steady to make the hair lay perfectly straight. If a child fidgeted, she would scold them with a booming, "Keep your head in one place." On occasion, when a child cried too much, she might even twist an ear gently to keep them still. Still, what children feared most were the embarrassing habits whispered about in the neighborhood. Sometimes, without warning, she would pass gas, even while holding a child's head between her thighs. The smell was unbearable, and the children often complained to their parents. But parents only laughed it off. "Do you want to waste money at those fancy salons where the braids don't last a week?" they would say. Beauty and durability matter more than comfort. And so, every weekend, the same scene repeated itself. Mothers dragging crying children to Yaba's salon, children begging and pleading, only to end up cross-legged on the floor with their heads trapped between Yaba's sturdy thighs. Neighbors often watched the drama unfold with amusement. The children, however, despised every moment of it. They murmured among themselves that Yagba was like some kind of witch, using people's tears as ingredients for her hair creams. Yet, in the eyes of adults, she was nothing short of a savior. The only one who could make a girl look flawless for school or a special event. But Yagba's reputation extended beyond her braiding skills or her strictness with children. She possessed another gift, one both captivating and perilous: gossip. Her salon was more than a place for hair. It was a hub of stories from dawn to dusk. While weaving braids, she would casually relay tales about one client to another. Her words were as precise and sharp as her fingers, and she had a talent for making ordinary events sound scandalous. Sometimes, she even added little fabrications to make the gossip more enticing. The moment a woman stepped out of her shop, the next client would inevitably hear something about her. Do you know how Yagba would lean in slightly, lower her voice and whisper? They say she argues with her husband every night. Oh, and she even smashed his phone last week. True or false didn't matter. What mattered was filling the air with juicy stories. The audience ate it up. Some laughed, some shook their heads in disbelief, but none ever contradicted her. Instead, they nodded and added their own tidbits. Thus, gossip became part of the entertainment in her salon. Many women came not just for braids but to catch the latest rumor in town. What they didn't realize was that Yagba gossiped about them as soon as they left, just as she did with everyone else. Loyalty had no place in her world. Gossip was like a hot pepper soup, far better with a sharp bite. Her habit earned her a notorious reputation. The community knew that if they wanted secrets to stay safe, they must never speak in Yagba's presence. Yet, they kept coming because her hands were magical, and her prices unbeatable. Gossip thrived in her salon, and she reveled in it. Over time, Yagba's gossip escalated. She no longer simply repeated what she had heard. She started inventing stories. Just like a juice isn't sweet enough without a pinch of spice, tales weren't exciting unless she added flair. If a client arrived in new clothes, she'd tell the next person, she borrowed that. It's not really hers. If someone appeared tired, she'd whisper, do you know she stayed at her boyfriend's last night? No wonder she looks drained. She would even merge two separate stories into one entirely new rumor. Slowly, her words began to divide the community. Women quarreled over accusations they never deserved. Husbands fought with wives over suspicions planted by Yagba's sharp tongue. And yet no one stopped visiting. The convenience of her affordable, durable braids kept them coming, even as her gossip loomed over them. Some warned her, Yagba, you talk too much. One day, this will land you in trouble. She only laughed, replying, let it come. As long as my hands still work, people will keep coming. Her confidence was unwavering. She believed no one in the community could do without her. She was the queen of braids, and in her mind, that gave her the right to speak as she pleased. The more caution she received, the more reckless she became. Eventually, clients began noticing something unsettling. Every visit seemed to reveal that Yagba knew far too much about them. She mentioned details they had only shared with a select few, twisting private confessions into dramatic tales. Women often relax while getting their hair done, sharing complaints about husbands, in-laws, or money troubles. Yagba listened closely, nodded, asked questions feigning concern, but all the while, she was gathering fuel for her next round of gossip. One woman confided about a miscarriage she had endured. By the next week, another client heard that the first woman's husband was already seeking a new wife. A woman mentioned she owed money at the market, and soon everyone believed she was a debtor running from creditors. Gradually, the salon became a place of unease. Some clients hushed themselves while having their hair done. Others spoke carefully, yet no one ever left without feeling exposed. People began calling it the Salon of Secrets, for anything said inside inevitably found its way back into the streets, twisted and exaggerated. Still, her braiding skills kept people coming, trapped between beauty and betrayal. In the same community lived a young woman named Nick. Nick was different from most. While others lingered in groups after evening prayers or at market stalls to gossip, Nick kept to herself. Slim, with a gentle face and quiet voice, people often said she spoke less than her own shadow. Nick was unmarried but not disconnected from men. She simply focused on her life, spending her days as an apprentice in a tailoring shop before quietly returning home. Few in the community knew much about her family. She minded her own business so diligently that some called her the one who carries her thoughts inside. Because of her nature, Nick rarely visited beauty salons, preferring to wash and comb her hair herself, or have her younger sister braid it simply. But one week, her tailoring shop prepared for a major ceremony. Her boss had been commissioned to sew for a big wedding, and Nick wanted to look presentable. After years, she finally decided to visit Yagba's salon. When she told her younger sister, the girl reacted in shock. "You're going to Yagba's salon?" she exclaimed. Nick smiled faintly. "Why not? I can't go to the ceremony with messy hair. But you know she'll still press your head and fuss over you afterward." Nick struggled inwardly. Let them talk, she thought. People would always have something to say. All she wanted was good hair. So on a bright sunny afternoon, she tied a small scarf around her head and slowly made her way to the well-known Mama Yag's salon. As soon as she walked in, the usual laughter and chatter quieted for a brief moment. The women inside turned, surprised to see her. Nick rarely appeared in such places. She greeted softly and took a seat. Alimo, known as Yag, froze for a moment, visibly shocked, but quickly masked it with her booming voice. Nick. So you finally decided to visit my humble shop today. What a special blessing. Oh, Nick said quietly, simply nodding. She wasn't one for unnecessary chatter. She untied her scarf, letting her natural hair show, and spoke softly. I just want simple braids. The other customers watched with curiosity as Abba prepared to braid Nick's hair. Nobody knew much about this quiet woman, and they were eager to see what stories might emerge from her visit. Nick followed the salon's routine, removing her slippers and sitting on the floor. Yag sat on her wooden stool and positioned Nick's slender head between her thighs. The moment her fingers touched Nick's hair, she began her usual banter, asking questions about her family, work, and friends. But Nick gave nothing more than short, clipped answers. Yes, no, or it's fine. After a while, Yag grew irritated. She was used to clients who spoke freely, who spilled their secrets while she worked. But Nick's silence felt like a challenge, as if she considered herself too important to share anything. Ah, you're so quiet, eh? Yag exclaimed loudly. Are you hiding secrets from us? Nick offered a faint smile. Not everyone likes to talk too much. The other women chuckled. One added, true. Some people keep everything in their hearts. Nick didn't respond. She closed her eyes and let the braiding continue. After 2 hours of tugging, parting, and weaving, Abba finished. She tied the last knot, rubbed some hair cream on it, and patted Nick's head. Stand up, look at yourself, she said proudly. Nick looked in the mirror and smiled. She paid quietly, thanked her, and left. She didn't linger for gossip or laughter. She simply walked away, calm as ever. The moment Nick left, Yag felt an itch for a story. Nick's quiet demeanor had stirred her curiosity, and she felt compelled to create her own tale. To Yag, no one could enter her shop and leave without becoming fodder for gossip. As soon as Nick disappeared, Yag leaned toward the remaining women, lowering her voice conspiratorially. Do you know that Nick has no womb? The women gasped. Yes, Yag continued, nodding as if presenting evidence. That's why she's so slim. People think it's just her nature, but the truth is, she's had so many abortions that the doctor eventually removed her womb. She can't have children. The women's eyes widened. Some covered their mouths in shock. One asked, Who told you this? Who told me? Yag scoffed. Just know it's true. Have you ever seen a man at her house? Have you heard of her dating anyone? Everyone knows she's spoiled. Nobody wants to marry her. The women shook their heads in pity and disbelief. No wonder she keeps to herself, one whispered. She must be ashamed. The gossip spread like wildfire. By evening, it had left the salon and reached the streets. By the next day, it was at the market, the mosque, and every corner of the community. Nick, who had always minded her own business, had suddenly become the hottest topic. Nick first noticed the change at the well near her house. 2 women who usually greeted her warmly now whispered behind her back, keeping their distance. When she greeted them, they responded with fake smiles. At the tailoring shop, colleagues exchanged strange looks. Some giggled whenever she walked past. One muttered, under her breath, See her slim body. Who knows how many abortions she's had? Nick froze. Abortion? She could not believe her ears. She turned sharply, but the girl quickly looked away. Whispers followed her everywhere. At markets, people stared or avoided her as if childlessness were contagious. Children teased her with mocking songs. At first, Nick tried to ignore it, thinking it would fade. But instead the story grew, gaining new, shocking details daily. Some claimed she fainted after an abortion and was secretly rushed to a hospital. Others said a doctor confirmed she could never have children. Nick's world seemed to collapse. She had done none of these things. She had no husband or child by choice, not because of illness. The more she thought, the more restless she became. She needed to find the source of this slander. Nick began her own discreet investigation, asking careful questions without revealing her anger. Each confirmation led to the same source. Yag, the woman she had trusted once to braid her hair. The same woman who had pressed her head between her thighs, now the architect of lies. For days Nick could barely eat. Nights were spent staring at the ceiling, wondering why anyone would hate her enough to spread such evil rumors. Tears often blurred her vision. She considered leaving the community entirely, but anger replaced her sadness. One night she whispered to herself, "No, I will not run. I will face her." The next morning, she dressed simply, tied her scarf firmly, and walked straight to Yag's salon. Her steps were firm, her eyes sharp. She was no longer silent. She was a woman on a mission. As Nick entered, the usual chatter stopped. All eyes were on her. She stood tall and spoke clearly. "Alimo, I have come to ask you, why did you lie about me?" The air grew heavy. Customers shifted uncomfortably. Nobody had confronted Yag so openly before, but Nick was fearless. Her dignity demanded it. The atmosphere tensed. Women who had come to braid their hair went silent, eyes moving between Nick's slender frame and Yag's imposing figure. It was as if a play was about to unfold. Nick's voice was steady, but her eyes burned. "Alimo," she repeated, using a name most avoided. "Why did you lie about me? Why tell everyone I have no womb? What gave you the right to spread such wickedness?" Yag, in the middle of plaiting a client's hair, paused. Shock flickered across her face. No one had ever confronted her like this. She quickly regained composure and scoffed loudly, her usual booming voice filling the room. So this is why you came, just to ask useless questions? Nick, aren't you ashamed? Everyone in the community knows your story. Why bother me?" Gasps filled the room. Some women exchanged nervous glances, expecting Nick to back down. But she stood firm. "My story," she demanded, voice rising. "Which story? The one you made up with your lying mouth. Alimo, you don't know me. You know nothing about me. Why would you stand in your shop and destroy my name?" The little girl on the floor whimpered as Yag pressed harder into her scalp, but the hairdresser was too busy defending herself to notice. She let go of the guest's hair and rose, her wide hips swaying as she adjusted her wrapper. "Listen here, Nick," she said, pointing with her thick fingers. "You may be slim, but don't think you can scare me. You cannot dictate what I say or don't say. Who do you think you are in this community? You, a dead rat, should know your place." Her words sliced through the air like a knife. Some women gasped, others shook their heads, but Nick stayed calm, her hands clenched at her sides. "You call me a dead rat," Nick said softly. "We shall see." Instead of calming, the other woman grew bolder, convinced that her size, popularity, and reputation in the community made her untouchable. Nick's courage seemed almost laughable to her. She stepped closer, chest forward, and asked, "And what will you do if I keep speaking about this? What then?" Nick met her gaze steadily. "I will hold you accountable. And I won't stay silent until you admit your lies." The tension in the shop thickened like an approaching storm. Some women whispered, urging Nick to leave before things turned violent. But Nick remained unmoved. Then the unthinkable happened. With a sharp hiss, the woman raised her massive palm and slapped Nick across the face. The sound echoed through the salon. Nick staggered but didn't fall. Her cheeks burned crimson, tears welling. Not from pain, but from the humiliation of being struck in front of everyone. The women gasped. "She went too far," someone shouted, though the hairdresser wasn't finished. Crossing her arms, the slapper said with pride, "What can she do? Nothing. Just like her name, Nick, the silent one. If she makes too much noise, I'll slap her again and again." Nick touched her reddened cheeks, eyes narrowing. Inside, something snapped. Years of being looked down upon, mocked for her slim frame, had built up, and now this woman had made a public spectacle. She couldn't walk away. The quiet woman had reached her breaking point. The slap ignited a fire in Nick no one had ever witnessed. Her slim frame trembled with rage. "You think I'm weak because I don't speak much," she said, voice sharp as shattered glass. "You think silence is fear. Today you'll learn otherwise." Before anyone could intervene, Nick lunged forward. Her body was slim but strong, forged from years of tailoring, cutting cloth, pulling needles, shaping fabrics. She grabbed Yagba by the wrapper and slammed her against the wooden wall. Chaos erupted in the salon. Women screamed and ran outside to fetch neighbors, while others stayed, captivated by the spectacle. Children shouted, their voices joining the cacophony. Yagba was stunned. She hadn't expected resistance. She tried to push Nick away, but Nick dodged and struck her face with precision. The sharp slap echoed again. "You slapped me because you thought I was nothing," Nick shouted. "Today, you'll carry the shame you gave me." The fight spilled into the street, and a crowd gathered, forming a circle around the two women. Some shouted for them to stop. Others clapped, entertained by the drama. Nick moved like a whirlwind, her lean body delivering blow after blow. Yagba, heavy and slow, struggled to catch her. Every attempt Yagba made to grab Nick ended in failure. Nick twisted free and struck again, exposing the wrapper beneath Yagba's hold. The crowd roared with laughter. The once feared queen of braids stumbled like a drunken woman, her dignity scattered. "Look at her. Slim Nick is beating Yagba like a child," someone shouted. Humiliation burned Yagba's pride. She lunged, hoping her weight could overpower Nick, but Nick sidestepped and shoved her hard, sending her crashing into the salon, breaking a wooden panel. A sharp crack echoed when Nick struck Yagba's left arm. "Ah, my hand," Yagba screamed, clutching it in pain. Nick wasn't done. She pinned Yagba to the ground, knee pressing on her chest. "Tell the truth," Nick demanded, voice trembling with anger. "Admit you lied about me." Yagba finally broke. Okay. I lied. I lied about you. I'm sorry. Please don't hurt me again." By the time Nick released her, Yagba's face was swollen, her wrapper torn, and her left hand bent awkwardly. Nick stood, panting, eyes still blazing. For the first time, the Queen of Braids had been beaten by the woman she once mocked as a dead rat. News of the fight spread through the community like wildfire. By evening, everyone knew. Market women, mosque elders, children fetching water, men sitting in beer parlors, all were talking. "Did you hear? Nick beat Yagba in the street. That slim girl fought like a lioness. She completely disgraced her." The once feared gossip became the laughingstock. People mocked her swollen face, her broken arm, even mimicking her cries. Children made a song about her downfall. "Don't be gossiping anymore." The worst blow wasn't the laughter, it was the silence that followed. Customers stopped coming to her salon. Mothers found excuses to avoid it, fearing her tongue or mistrusting her skills. The wooden salon, once bustling, now stood empty. Her injured hand made braiding impossible, and even if she could, no one would sit for her. Alone in her house, nursing her broken hand in pride, Yagba never imagined her fall would come so suddenly. And from the woman she considered weak. The Queen of Braids had fallen. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this story. Share in the comments the lessons you learned from it, like this video, and kindly share it with your loved ones. Until next time, this is goodbye.